All right. Welcome to this week's live office hours. Casey, how's it going?
Things are good. Things are good. Yeah, just got through, the rush of Black Friday. Hopefully everyone got a lot of sales and hopefully got some shopping done as well. I'm feeling pretty good. I think I got like 90% of my shopping done, so I'm in a good spot.
Nice. I purchased nothing and I feel so excited about it. But I still have a few things I need to get. My stepson's finally getting into baseball cards, like collecting. He pulled
Mhm.
out his book from his dad's the other day.
Nice.
700 something already. I'm like, dude, you started like a month ago. What are we doing here?
There we
So I'm
go.
gonna get him
Nice.
some tops packs and stuff like that to open. Um, but yeah, kind of exciting. It's funny. Hey Ryan, happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays. So there's been this lull. I mean, listen, it's the end of the year. All businesses are pretty much just chilling right now, which to me drives me insane. I need stimulation. So I'm dying on the inside of boredom right now because there's just not a lot of energy, and I feed off that. But there's been a few releases that came out, and we're working on some stuff too, by the way, that were some small releases that I think are just nice quality of life things in Aura that are going to be awesome that Jacob's working on our team. So we just released V1 of that today, basically splitting out marketplaces from regions, allowing filtering on that, which we previously didn't have, especially for some of our larger agency-based clients where they have multiple storefronts in their Aura account. It's kind of hard to manage. So we're fixing a lot of that stuff. Baking in some nice quality of life stuff, friendlier names, things of that nature. That's all I'll say, because I think this is kind of a nice one that will kind of surprise you with. So we'll have a change log get released and an email go out once that's all live. But we're taking a slightly iterative approach to get this stuff moving. On the AI front, there's not been a lot happening as of late. And when I say late, I mean like the last week, because you can't be thinking months in this space. It's not physically possible. But two things kind of happened today. One, Sam Altman of OpenAI, GPT-4, all that company, stated that they are doing 12 days of Christmas, which they stated basically there's going to be one release per day of varying degrees. There's going to be a few big releases. There's going to be some small kind of filler stuff that are still going to be nice. The current rumors are that O1, the full model, will get released. I think that makes logical sense. We've only had preview and O1 mini, which are variations of the actual O1 model. So basically, we've only seen a preview of what this thing is capable of, and it's still pretty mind-boggling. So we get full version of that. That's pretty cool. But they're working on some agent-based things, right? If you look at the 5 levels of AI that Amazon's talking about, level 1 being basically chatbots, which we've had. Level 2 being human level reasoning, which we recently got. Level 3 being agents. This is like the big, I think, most impactful thing that will occur. It is likely that they preview something along those lines that we don't get to use until 2025, but we're pretty close. Still exciting to kind of see what happens. So 12 releases, 12 days, kind of a big deal for them. They don't release that frequently, so we're hoping it's a major deal. Another one, and I'm gonna share my screen here because I just came across this one, and you guys have heard me mention this quite a bit, that AI is coming to our space relatively fast. And for context, what I mean by that is there's a difference between something being technically possible, like you can do it, and being fine-tuned or fit for a specific use case. That's the easy part, in my opinion. If it's not engineering technically feasible, that's a larger problem. A lot of those things are starting to go away. So I probably a few months ago found out about a company that got released where they're essentially doing like AI receptionists. They can handle a lot of different workflows, and their go-to demo use case was like a rental agent person, where it's like, cool, like I'm not taking phone calls and scheduling demos. It's doing all that for me. And I just show up, be like, hey, take a look around, blah, blah, blah. Great. Now this is a company coming out doing the same thing for the most part, but for logistics, right? So we're okay. Amazon sellers, it's e-commerce, but logistics is in our world pretty heavily, right? So I just want to highlight this. I'm not sure how well I can highlight it because it's a video, but I'll share it with you guys. So let's see if we can get the audio coming in through here. Casey, can you hear that?
I cannot.
Okay, not a problem. I'm not sure how to fix that. Okay, but basically what's going to happen, I'm walking through it. He's receiving a phone call, and it sounds exactly like a human, and you assume it is for a long period of time. Turns out it's an AI agent. So what is occurring is the AI agent called him because he submitted a truckload requirement, said, hey, I need a pickup. And then the agent's calling him, asking him a few questions, be like, yeah, we can totally do that. Here's some of the requirements. And he goes, okay, cool. You guys mentioned a quota $2,000 to do this. I'm going to need a little bit more. Could you do 2,500? It goes, hold on, let me check with my manager. Puts him on hold. Another guy enters the frame. It slacks that guy, says, hey, I got a guy here. Here's what he's wanting to do. Could we pay an extra $100? And he goes, just do 50 more. So then it unmutes with the guy on the phone, goes, hey, I can do an extra $50 on the delivery. How's that sound? Yep, sounds great, blah, blah, blah. Gives him some time constraints. And he goes, hey, actually, can we pick it up an hour early? And he goes, hold on, let me check. Puts him on hold again. A third guy enters into the scene. It calls that guy and then says, hey, would it be a problem if they picked up an hour early? He goes, no, that should be a problem. Okay, cool, thanks. I'll Slack you once I have this locked down. So the guy in the middle is essentially like the carrier, like an LTL carrier. The two guys on the outside are basically in a company with the AI. And the AI is managing all these things and then reaching out to say, hey, can I do that? And he goes, kind of, yes, no, here's some stipulations. And so think about this, like it can handle email, it's texting, it's slacking, it's phone calling, it's delegating, it's putting somebody on hold. And I kid you not, like, go check this out. It's a company called happyrobot.ai. If you want to watch the full video, which I think you should, you got to hear the audio in this. I mean, the AI's voice is absolutely convincing. When they started the demo, there wasn't a whole lot of context. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, what's going to happen? They're probably going to pass it off to an agent. I knew it was agent related. And then I was like, oh, the person talking is the agent, because it's not super formal. It's professional, but it's casual. It's like,
right.
When it jumps back on, it goes, hey, man, I was able to get 50. Could you do it that way? What do you mean, hey, man? Like, that's so, like, wow. Like, that's such a specific type of language that we don't see. And then there's a dog. So it's just one of those things where this stuff is coming again. I say this all the time, and I'm going to continue harping on it until we get AGI probably next year, hopefully, that you need to start looking at what's coming, because, I quote tweeted this or retweeted this and said, hey, imagine this, but 10 of these in parallel, reaching out to brands and opening wholesale accounts for you. You can't just look at exactly what they're doing. That's cool. You have to look at what are the components. What is it doing? It's having a conversation. It's negotiating a bit. It's coming back to you as the human when it needs some clarification or approval on anything. And so if we know that phone calling has a higher conversion rate to opening wholesale accounts than emailing does, we know that, right? I know that. I know it's at least a 4x increase in conversion on open rates. Okay, well, your question then becomes, well, how do I do a ton of those? Because it's just a sales game, right? It's a numbers game. Okay, well, if I'm going to open 4 out of 10 I call, and I know that only 1 out of those 4 are really going to be profitable with one SKU for me, how many SKUs do I want? How much money do I have to spend? Reverse engineer the math. That's how many calls I got to make a day. Well, as one human, your time is very precious, and you can't parallel that, right, without hiring a sales team. Most wholesale sellers are not building sales organizations, although they probably should consider it to a degree. Some of your larger ones are definitely, opening or hiring like account openers and stuff like that, but very rare, and from my experience and what I've seen. Why? It's very expensive, and it's hard to do outbound sales when you're spending the money instead of getting money back. You can't do commissions on that. Right. You can do commissions on profit, but that's a harder thing to track too. So imagine having 10 of these in real time, and you just have a list of leads in your CRM or whatever, and it just knows, I'm going to cold call. I'm going to deal with I know the objections. I know how to handle those best. Cool. I mean, what if you were placing POs and you got a Slack notification? Hey, just open a new account with this person at this brand. So-and-so is going to send over an email with the purchase list and cost and all that breakdown. Great. I didn't do anything. I mean, right? You really have to take what did they just do, and how do I generalize what they just did, and could that be applicable to what I do? And that's the impactful thing. So it's very awesome, and you know, a lot of these companies are building these. I hate to call them agents because I don't like that term being used the way that it's being used, because it's really an automated workflow with AI inside of it.
Right.
To me, that's a little different because you're still having to build the workflows and stuff like that. Like I use Lindy as a good example. I don't think you're building agents there. You're really building automated workflows with AI inside of it. It's nice. It's better than basic, hard, rigid automation, but it's somewhere between automation like Zapier and a true AI agent.
Right.
But we're closing that gap, right? So with the releases that could be coming from OpenAI, that could change. And so eventually you get to a point where you don't have to be tech savvy. You don't have to find a company building this stuff exactly for your industry and your use case. You know, they're probably not going to be $100 a month to use this. They're probably, I mean, there's a get a quote link. So that tells you already they're wanting to do sales, which is hilarious because if they have their AI do sales for them, that's so meta and I love it. But eventually, like I'm telling you, in the next 6 months, this will change. And you'll be able to do this stuff yourself. And it will cost you pennies on the dollar. And you'll have an agent and say, hey, go find brands that fit this kind of criteria, right? Maybe dump all your inventory lab information and say, hey, for each of these brands, go research them and create a profile for each one. Once you've done that, extract the patterns. What's the company size? What's the industry? Like extract those kinds of patterns. You give it to another agent and say, hey, go find me brands that match this pattern. It was okay. And when it does that, maybe it adds it to a Google Sheet. And then you have another agent that wakes up whenever that happens and it starts calling them and opening up accounts. And what if you have that running 24/7? This is what I've been kind of alluding to lately on socials is like the problems of sellers in the future is going to be capital. Because you're not going to be constrained, or you either have a sourcing problem or a capital problem. When you get started, you mostly have a sourcing problem because you don't know how to do it. Once you crack that, now it's how fast can I spend money and how fast can I put money back into the system for growth? This changes that because now, in theory, your sourcing problem could be eliminated because it's so easy to do now. Now it's a capital problem. But here's the thing. If that business is that good because the sourcing is not a problem, raising capital won't be an issue either. So eventually I think we get to a point where it comes down to how big of a business do you want?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. And I think a lot of what we talk about too is like time. Like that tends to be the biggest restriction now due to sourcing primarily. And I know we were talking, I think it was last week or the week before, about different ways to perhaps leverage AI tools that are available now to free up more of your time to continue to pour that time into sourcing as these AI agents or options or not necessarily agents like workflows like we're talking about, as those become more sophisticated and you have more ability to configure them properly, that's only going to continue to free up more of your time to dump into sourcing. And then if you can automate sourcing, then you're using your free time for other side hustles, maybe just spending time with your family, maybe optimizing what you have running. So it's definitely super exciting to think about where we are now, how quickly it's evolving, and then the dream scenario of getting to a point where it is kind of self-sufficient and running, and you only have to come in when various certain problems arrive that need that specific human touch, as opposed to just having things automated in the background.
Yeah. And all the, eMyth Revisited and Work the System, their analogy for how things should be is a machine. It's a machine that hums and runs. But that's hard to do. And it's expensive to do with people and things of that nature. And a lot of people build smaller businesses than what they're capable of or what they want because of a lot of those things. So their fantastical analogy of how to think about it is now how you could do it. And so somebody tweeted on this. It was like, this is the first time where I've understood the statement that we will see a one person billion-dollar revenue company in existence, how that could happen. Like now we went from this like crazy interesting concept to like, oh, that's like a futuristic thing. Like we could see the trajectory, but that's so far out. And now you start to see things like this. You're like, oh, now I can see how it could be done. Not what it is, but how it could be done. And so, you know, again, VAs will go away. You only have VAs because they're affordable and they help do things for you. You're not, most of the time, you're not hiring VAs with special skill sets or training in a lot of cases, right? You're hiring general people. All that goes away. And now you're not thinking in dollars per hour, you're thinking in cents per hour, and you're thinking hyperscale. There is no time off. There is no hurricanes. There is no power outages. It is, and if you need 10 of them, you spin up 10. I mean, all the blockers that slow down growth go away if you extrapolate, you know, enough time out. I mean, this is where we're at now. 2025, no idea. Like, oh my gosh, like the current, every big person in AI right now, like running foundational models, building them, is basically said anywhere from 2025 to 2027. That's the range generally given. We will have AGI next year. Not 4 years from now, not a decade, next year. Yeah. And it skews, by the way, mainly to 2020, late 2025, early 2026.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about. And I mean, that can even speed up based on how things have been really kind of optimizing or firing on all cylinders, rather.
Yeah, I mean, it's exponential, right? So it's slow at first, and then it's all at once. Right. And we're peaking on that all at once. And I think next year it goes hyperbolic, and we're like, holy crap. Okay. And I don't say this to, you know, worry anybody, but I do want everybody to be thinking as a business owner, how do I leverage this stuff? Because it does matter. There's a lot of people kind of doing what I've always done, which is I write a lot, but I write out like, what would this look like? What would this feel like? Or like, what would that reality be like? Using this kind of futuristic technology. I use ChatGPT for this. I'll be like, hey, give me a list of like the most cutting edge technology. And he'll give me a list. I'll be like, okay, give me a day in the life of a founder using all that technology. Just to see, right? Brainstorm, get some ideas, like get some inspiration. But now we're at a place where you don't stop there. You go and say, okay, based on what's currently possible, let's V1 of that, right? It's not going to be AGI, but it's going to be, okay, I got an AI agent that does calls for me and opens wholesale accounts. Maybe I have another one that analyzes purchase sheets for wholesale or sources OA for me or whatever, right? Like just, you got to get creative with this stuff. But eventually I think what will happen is just like what is happening here, where you're taking this concept of AI agents doing something, and then I hate to use the term fine tuning because that's an incorrect term, but you're basically specializing it for one vertical, saying we do this for that industry only. Eventually that will make its way here. And heck, I don't know, maybe we'll build it. That'd be awesome. Like, but it's coming, so a lot of the software you're using will probably change. And I think that's for the better. I think you'll have less point and click, I got to upload this file and do that thing. And it's more just like, hey, do it for me. You got this. Here's my criteria. Make it happen. Okay. Holy crap.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's really interesting, especially as we get to a point where I know we talked about, I think it was last week, where we are still at the point where AI is generally designed for a specific function. But as we get to the point where just inputs and prompts become more readily available within workflows or AI models, rather, it's going to continue to just broaden how you can configure things and automate certain functions. I mean, I know you're just talking about like analytics, the ability to kind of produce that data, and then all you have to do is analyze the data. It could obviously get to a point where it's like, hey, analyze this data for me and make informed decisions, or informed assumptions, and then you kind of just continue to just trim down that manual human time that would be required for you to do it on your own, whether you do it on your own, an employee to do it on your own. Like you said, like the solo person multi-billion-dollar business isn't unrealistic in a couple of years by any means.
Yeah, right. And that's not to say you'll want that. Like, I like having a team for the record. It's way, I think being a solo founder is probably one of the most loneliest things you could ever do. But it does allow you to like kind of restructure things and, but, talking about analytics and things like here's one that's been around for actually a hot minute, called Julius, which basically is computational AI. So you upload a bunch of data and you ask it questions, and it does data statistical analysis, all kinds of cool stuff. Find interesting insights, run this statistic on it. I wish I had this when I took business calc in intro to stats. That I could have just been like, hey, here's the data set, here's what I want, do it. Would have saved me a lot. I had to calculate the p values and all that stuff. Right. So a lot of this stuff you can kind of do for the most part, but Julius has been around for a while. But it's one of those things where I think sellers are very strict about using seller focused software. And I think that makes a lot of sense in a lot of cases. But when you're doing generalized problem solving, I think they tend to say, well, what software is built for sellers that does that? And that's a really hard thing, right? Instead, in some of those cases, you want to go more generalized. You want to say, okay, well, what am I doing as a high level thing? Well, I'm doing data analysis. Okay, well, what's the best AI data analysis tool that exists? Okay, fit it to your use case. There's a lot you can do with that kind of concept. So yeah, I don't know. A lot of this stuff you can kind of already do.
Yeah,
crazy. So you see, Matthew, I need this for my mortgage business. Get it? I forget what the name of the other one was. I think it was like, I want to say Feather. That's I know that's not it. It was green and white. Oh, that's all I remember. I'm sure I have it saved on X somewhere. But yeah, this stuff keeps me pumped. I think next year, like I said, is going to be pretty impressive and somewhat scary at the same time. Yeah. That's kind of where I straddle. I'm like, this is really awesome. Holy crap, what does that mean? And I have to think about it for like an hour and be like, let me process this for a bit. Because some of it, you're like, holy crap, this could change everything. Like it gets to that degree. But as a founder in the software space, like I'm always testing this stuff because I'm like, what could we build with this? Like, what is now like our wildest, craziest ideas? Can we now do that? What's holding us back from doing this now? And a lot of those barriers, like I mentioned earlier, are starting to topple over. And it's kind of coming down to like, well, how creative are we? What are the ideas? Let's go build it. So exciting times ahead. I'm very pumped. I think it's going to be a fun 12 days of Christmas for the OpenAI team. Hopefully we'll see if they can back it up, right? There's a big difference between hype and, actually doing something with it. So
yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll have to kind of break down those different releases on office hours if there's anything big or anything that makes big waves in terms of any of those releases.
Yeah. Is my video choppy?
Yeah, you're a little choppy right now.
A little choppy. Okay. Not sure how to fix that right now while live.
I was going to say, I wasn't sure if that was my internet connection or yours, so I didn't want to outwardly mention it in case it was just me.
The fact that it was my video, I was like, that's definitely me somehow.
Yeah.
Weird. Annoying. Yeah, so, that's just kind of us geeking out. Any questions related to Aura repricing, general stuff, let us know. We're happy to dive deep into it.
Yeah, any trends that you folks saw over Black Friday, Cyber Monday, any findings or anything that seemed interesting to you? Would definitely love to hear about that as well, and we can kind of chop it up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm curious. Our little tester account here did pretty well on Black Friday and Cyber Monday. I shared that on socials. But Cyber Monday crushed Black Friday, which I'm curious. I mean, it makes sense, but I'm kind of curious how that played out with other sellers too. Like, is that like a consistent trend there? This is something we'll want to do at the end of this year, like going into January, is like analyzing all this data and be like, cool, like here's some trends that we saw as a software company that like you can keep in mind. What's the average ROI? What's the average profit margin? What was the best categories? Things of that nature. I think would be really fun to kind of do a deep insight blog post on and share with everyone.
Definitely. Yeah. And from my experience as a consumer on Black Friday and Cyber Monday, the main thing I saw was that I don't know if this is different for anyone else, but it seemed that it was mostly the same deals. Granted, I was doing most of my shopping through specific brands as opposed to on
Yeah.
Amazon or Walmart or anything like that. But most brands seem to just have the same sales through Monday. Obviously, some things were out of stock, which makes sense. But would be curious if anyone really saw specific deals maybe that were better on Cyber Monday or Black Friday, kind of the differences between those. So for me, I got lucky. It seemed like it was primarily all the same deals, and most of the things I
Yeah.
needed was in stock. So lucked out there. But yeah, it would be
I was
interesting.
shopping on Amazon, and I have this habit where I'm like, is that really a discount? So I pull it up and keep it. I'm like, you said it was a discount, but it's not. It's been at the same price. Because you know the hack, right? I think Target does this quite a bit, where it's like, oh, it's discount. It's like, yeah, but you raised the retail price. It's the same price that I'm paying. It's not a discount. So I did that on something I've been eyeing. I was like, almost got me. Almost got me.
Yeah.
Let's see. Casey submitted my question earlier today about possibly adding map pricing to the listing page. Casey, you want to dive deeper on that one?
Yeah, so that was a pretty good feature request from Matthew there. Essentially, he's got, it sounds like a decent number of items that have some sort of map pricing involved. Essentially requesting to have map price as a specific column on the listings page. That way he doesn't have to click into each individual listing and be like, is this one of those map items? Is it not? Obviously, for anyone who isn't aware, the map field in Aura is currently just a reference field for yourself. So if you do have any items that require map, you want to set that as a manual min price. But definitely thought it made sense from Matthew's end to kind of just simplify the number of clicks you're doing when you're doing that inventory management, just to maybe have it as a column on that listings page so you can quickly reference that. Obviously, if the field's blank, it's not map, vice versa. So yeah, I did submit that for you, Matthew. And for anyone who doesn't know, I think is it feedback at goaura.com or the specific URL there?
Feedback.goaura.com. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that'll be the best place to both submit and then track feature requests as well. So as always, if anyone has any of those feature requests, definitely feel free to come through chat. I can pass that along or upvote anyone that already submitted that feature request. But you can also do that yourself at that URL there.
Yeah. See, Ryan, wild times have changed, and now almost the entire month of November is Black Friday. Yeah, it's like early Black Friday, extended Black Friday. Like, dude,
yeah,
it's Friday. But hey, that's marketing for you. How do we get more deals? Run the deal longer. So makes a lot of sense. See, would switching to a Maven strategy right now on some additional listings be a bad idea, since it may take a while to analyze the listings in sellers? I actually don't think that would be a problem, especially now is when it would be less of a problem, because you have so much data flowing in. Actually, the learning time, in my opinion, would actually be compressed down. So actually it shouldn't take as long as it normally would in a regular time. And for context, really active listings, hour, maybe. For really non-active listings, really stale listings, could take a day or so. Really just depends. That's kind of the fluctuation we tend to see. But for Q4, it's probably compressed down pretty fast. So probably less of a problem. So I don't think it would be a bad idea. Actually, I think it would be a great idea, especially as we're going into kind of that latter half of the shopping period. You want to make sure you're getting the most value for the products that you do have left over.
Yeah, and just to shed some more light there for some folks, so Maven will learn based on the number of offer changes submitted. So that's from all competition on a listing. So the more competitors you have on a listing, the quicker Maven's going to learn there. And then also buy box data and just general sales on the listing will also inform Maven. So now is that good time where that learning curve is going to be kind of condensed due to the amount of activity there. Like Dylan said, it will probably take a few hours for it to learn, if that. Generally throughout the year, if it's a slow time in selling, I recommend giving it 2 to 3 days just to really make sure that, hey, if it's not optimized by that point, then you should probably switch to rule-based. But yeah, I would agree. Right now, if you're not seeing good results in about 24 to 36 hours, you could probably adjust off of Maven. Just so much activity, it should learn pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't want to miss out on any pre-Xmas sales, but have been having success with Maven. Yeah, totally. And keep in mind too, what a lot of sellers can do is move things too fast. And, again, yay, we sold everything, but you could have sold the same amount in a slightly extended period of time, but for 20% more margin, that's more dollars in your pocket. So you do want to be mindful of that. If you're coming to the latter half of the selling season, you'll want to become more aggressive and make sure you don't have anything, kind of stranded, kind of just sitting there. But for things that are moving pretty well, yeah, I mean, listen, use Maven, get the most amount of profit you can from the demand increase that we're seeing right now. So I think it's a great thing to do, and I'm glad you're seeing success with Maven as well. See, Peter, does the cost in Aura come into play with the pricing or only to provide ROI? So both, actually. So if you're calculating your mins and maxes, we'll factor in your costs using ROI, profit margin, fixed profit, things of that nature, as well as changing your pricing, specifically looking at things like reduced profit ranges. So, if we're setting the mins and maxes, we want to factor in the cost, because if that puts you in a bad reduced profit range, we need to adjust for that as well. So the cost does come into play quite a bit there. Yes.
Yeah, and also jump in, you can tag Peter's next question there. So yeah, Aura will automatically factor in those Amazon fees for you. So that fulfillment referral fee, that's already taken care of. But specifically in the cost field, any shipping, prep, or storage fees you take on to sell an item, you'll also want to add those into that cost field. Those are highly variable costs. So we don't have a way to just automate and insert those fees there. Storage fees vary, shipping fees vary depending on provider, location, weight, all sorts of things there. So you'll just want to bake all of those into that one cost field. We have been discussing potentially adding additional cost fields, but want to make sure that if we do provide that update, to do it in the way that's most applicable to all of our users. We know a lot of people have different setups, different fees, different ways they want to calculate them. So for now, it will just all be baked into that one cost field.
Yep. Great question, by the way. Yeah, I feel like half the internet has taken off the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's been funny. The time in support has been a little bit slower these last few days. Understandably, people making sure that everything's being sold. I'm sure there's a lot of inventory management going on, things like that. We are still here to help, obviously, so don't hesitate to reach out during this time. But I understand repricing may not quite be top of mind right now, probably more so inventory management and analysis. But yeah, and I'm sure.
But we're still working.
Yeah,
so we are here.
We are still here. People probably preparing for return-uary as well.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, a lot
get ready. Right now. Yeah, I never really had crazy returns when I was a seller.
Do you think that was due to like what you were selling, or
I don't know, that, or I just got lucky? I don't know. I just never had a ton for some reason. But I was very picky too, which kept me from growing super fast. But
yeah.
When you're in college and only have so much capital, you kind of need to be a little picky.
Oh, absolutely.
But in hindsight, I'm like, I should have been a little bit more aggressive. See, Jeffrey, just to follow up with that question, the fees do not include our inbound placement fees, right? That's correct. So we're not including FBA inbound fees either. We kind of have an opinion on this where that's more of a operational cost than it is a per unit cost. I know some sellers view it that way. Don't really think it's best practice to do that. What a lot of sellers are trying to do is get true net profit and factor everything they can into their mins and maxes. I think that is really cumbersome and not the best route possible. You have your unit economics, so everything really related per unit, and then you have your overarching operational costs. The way we tend to operate is your FBA inbound is actually an operational cost, right? So if you did, $1,000 in gross profit and it cost you $50 in that period or for that cohort of inventory that you sold to ship into inventory, then you would factor that out. And that's how you get closer to your actual true net profit. That's just how we've done it. That not to say that won't change. There's a lot of ways you can do that, certainly. But I don't like the assume 50 cents per pound. I think that's a good thing from a sourcing perspective and understanding the operational costs, but I don't think that's a good way of getting additional costs into your repricing software. Personally, I think it misses a lot. You either want it hyper accurate or consider it an operational cost, which to me, I think makes a little bit more sense, but that's just my brain.
And what a lot of folks will do is they'll just generally create like a typical range of whatever their shipping costs are, whether it's FBM shipping or inbound shipping. And then they'll just lean towards that higher side just so that their mins and maxes kind of protect their margin at the very least. That way it's obviously not hyper accurate, but you're not going to trim margins too thin. And that does kind of generally cover that operational cost. So that's one way to do it, kind of figure out, hey, it's usually between $3 and $5. Let me just tack on $4.50 to each item or something along those lines, just to try and make it as a safety net, so you're not getting any sales for losses or only a few cents of profit or margin there.
Yeah, really impactful on the sourcing front, though. Making like that's a big deal. I think that a lot of sellers miss is like you really want to factor in a lot of that stuff when you're purchasing inventory, because if you do that right, everything that's subsequent to that is the easy part to do. When you miss it on the front end and you try to apply on the back end, you end up adding too many constraints. And what happens is you realize maybe I shouldn't have actually purchased that thing, or my expectations for mins and maxes is actually flawed because I bucketed that inventory into bucket A when it should have really been bucket 2 or bucket B. And I actually should have, been willing to go down to 10% instead of 30% ROI on the min. So you kind of want to think about this like a funnel. The earlier in the funnel you can add data and make better decisions, the easier it is for everything to flow through the funnel on the back end. That's like a good way to kind of think about this.
Yeah, if you do all those calculations and work up front, it's going to be easier to kind of digest and comprehend and split up, as opposed to, this specific item is a little different than that specific item. And just leads to more manual work for sure.
Yeah. And I was a lazy seller, so any hacks or anything like that I could do, I would do, because I'm like, listen, it's already complicated and time consuming as is. What are the little things that I can implement that just make it easier to avoid things like decision fatigue, or like, we use our intuition, which is good if you built that up through experience and expertise, but you don't want to rely on that as a newer seller. And this is why in our mental models blog post, I explicitly mentioned first principles. We're really easy to hear the nice, easy, pithy thing that larger sellers are saying, but we don't understand what it really means or how they got there. And so instead you need to take the hard road, which I know sounds horrible, but you need to create use your own first principles to understand what really truly works, and then use what you've learned to hone your intuition, hone your expertise, hone your experience, to then be able to create those hacks for yourselves, those speed boosts, right? Like for me, it was a checklist. I made a few different bad decisions that I said, okay, cool. What did I do that was bad? Factor that into the checklist to avoid that moving forward. And then I ended up with a pretty simplistic checklist. I'm like, cool, if I just didn't purchase things on this that meet this criteria, at least one of these, I have a 90% chance of doing really solid with this. And it helped me avoid a lot of the pitfalls, painfulness, what have you. But nobody could just give me that and me crush it. Like I should have to question everything. Like for me on my list, if Amazon's selling on it, I'm not dealing with it. I know sellers even back then that would go up against Amazon and crush it. Who's right? Well, we both are right. It depends on the listing is what I found out, but I had to get to that level to understand why is what you're saying, what I'm saying, both correct, and what's the truth here. That's the first principle. Okay, now I know in some cases I can, and other cases I can't. How do I look for that? So I took a simplistic approach first, but then as I learned more, I could say, okay, cool. There's actually some nuances to this particular area of the checklist. Let me flesh that out. and then I can still, filter things out and say, cool, if it passed all my filters, I'm so good. I can compete on Amazon on this listing. I'm fine. But on this other listing where Amazon's on, I'm not going to buy that one because it's going to create some problems. Great. That's actually a really good way of viewing things. Like, don't trust your gut until you've built up a good gut, right? Like, if you don't know what you're doing, you can't use intuition. That's a fact. I love this one. Have you guys considered making an AI tool that can find profitable products? I have considered that. We have not talked about that internally as a company because we have so much on our plates that we're trying to work through, and we have so many ideas. There are things that I think, not that I think, that we are actively working on that I think will be more impactful sooner for a large number of sellers. I think once we get through some of that stuff, we'll have the capacity to sit down and just experiment and say, cool, like, what could we do here? I think about this a lot, like way too much, to be honest. I would love to build this, but there's a lot of challenges that are going to come with it. How do you price it? That's an interesting one. How do you avoid competition? Like because here's what happens when you look at your sourcing based software. It's the same data shared to everyone, which is why they don't really work in the long run. Because if we're all looking at the exact same leads and we're all buying the exact same leads, what happens? The competition skyrockets, the buy box goes to the ground, profitability goes away. It's basic economics. What you really want is an AI agent just for you. Now, you could build this for 10,000 sellers, and each one is, somewhat unique to each seller, each user, each customer. And you want to be able to put in your own criteria. This is what I like to buy. This is what I like to look for. Only give me things that match this. But what you don't want to have happen, which is what's common right now, is a bunch of web scraping. So it's all the same data. You apply a filter to the same data, and then you purchase from there. It's the same data. Instead, what you want is something that can go out real time and go and find you data, or go and find you leads, not give me access to leads. That's really what they're doing, right? They're saying, cool, we scraped all this information. We have all the data. We'll give you access to it, and we'll keep updating in the background. So that's one to many. What you really want is many to many, or I guess one to one, really. That I think makes a lot more sense. To get the pricing on that to make sense, I think it's kind of difficult, because you could, and this is where a lot of the AI companies are trying to go towards on the agent front, which is like per output. So it could be like, cool, for each lead we find you that matches your criteria, we charge you $5, and it just is what it is. Others could be a straight, how much capital are you wanting to spend? Okay, based on that, based on the workload, we think we're going to charge you $600. Okay. So there's a lot to it outside of just the technical, can we build it? I think the can we build it is actually not necessarily the hardest thing. Like, I don't think, or let me rephrase. I don't think everything outside of that is super easy. I think they're equally difficult in their own ways. Not insurmountable. We could totally do it. But that's a big project. And I don't know, if I get a really good sourcing agent, do I want to share it? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But no, I think this is something I personally would love to work on. But us as a company, we have a lot of priorities, a lot of bigger projects that I think will be more impactful in the short term that we should work on outside of this. But I like hacking on this stuff on the weekends anyways, so who knows? Maybe that'll change. We'll see. But great question. Great question. Either way, even if we don't build it, like, it's coming. You're either going to have a tech savvy seller figure out how to build this for themselves, and they're going to scale and crush it. You'll have a company get created, or a company like us go and build that commercially for everyone. But it'll happen. Let's see. Have you considered making a seller board integration with Aura to track P&L expenses, et cetera, to the penny? We have. We have tried to push with seller board quite a bit. Don't think it's going to go really far, to be honest. So what I will say is we have something better in the pipeline for you, is what I will say. Still in stealth mode on that, but next year we will have that ready to go by Q1. So, or in Q1, not by Q1, in Q1, just to set better expectations here. Inside of Q1, we will have something that will basically help you out a lot with this kind of stuff. Another great question, though. So what it all comes down to: more accurate data, and then making great, amazing decisions with that data, and then scaling the crap out of your Amazon business. That's what it comes down to. I think we will get to a point where, I mean, this is possible. You have all these agents set up, managing the whole thing, buying inventory, managing your software. And then again, it gets to that point where it's like, cool, now I just need more capital. It's like, well, listen, if you got a system that works and the only limitation is capital, hit me up. I'll give you some money. Yeah, I'll do that all day. If you've already built this and you're not telling anybody, there's got to be one person, I swear, there's one person who's already done all this that I'm talking about. They're just laughing in their basement right now. Like, if Dylan only knew. Hit me up. I would love to invest. That'd be incredible. So any plans for keeping the tracker for Q1? Probably not. This is going to be mainly like a Q4 kind of thing. But some stuff we're working on, I think we'll still get you to where you want to go for Q1. So, but yeah, the Q4 dashboard strictly for Q4. It's really static in terms of like what we show. That's by design because everybody's the exact same. Outside of Q4, what you probably want is more personalization, more specifics to you. Like there's a few things, like we're not showing your top 3 products or top 3 categories. We wanted to. I think there's value to it, but we also wanted you to share this stuff on social. That means we can't put in certain data that would kind of out you or give people too much insight into your business. So we had to take this kind of privacy first approach where we obfuscate the details as much as we could. But you'll be able to do some cool stuff where that's not a limitation in Q1. See, Peter, I have 10 listings with a suppressed buy box. Would my strategy for buy box targeting 5% min ROI adjust downwards until the listing is no longer suppressed, as long as it doesn't go below my min price? Depends on your strategy settings. What I would recommend, Peter, is reach out to support and just let us know, hey, here's the strategy. Ask the same. You can honestly just copy and paste this into chat. We'll be able to look into your account, look at the actual strategy settings, and tell you if that's true or not. And if it's not, we'll tell you how to fix it too.
Yeah. And just so you know there, Peter, the default setting is to have it set to unsuppress that buy box. Yeah. So if you're targeting the buy box under pursuit, it'll say if there's no competition or if the buy box is suppressed. If it says customize current price minus 2 cents, that's where Aura is going to incrementally drop that price until that buy box is reactivated or your min price is reached. So if you didn't make any changes in that section, then you should be all set. But yeah, like Dylan said, Finn is running chat right now. I'll be back on in about 15 minutes, but definitely feel free to shoot a note there and we can just confirm that that's set up for you.
Nice. So you love the ranking on the dashboard to show improvement. Yeah, we wanted to gamify it, right? It's a nice time to look in the mirror, say, how am I doing actually? And everybody I talk to are like, yeah, this makes me want to work harder. I was like, good. That's a good thing. So that's awesome to hear. See, Jeffrey, are there any plans in the pipeline to allow minimizing the listing column size? I find myself forgetting which SKUs are which sometimes when I scroll too far right. We are thinking about that. There's some updates coming to that soonish. The first thing I would recommend is to actually customize it. So when you're looking at the listings table view, in the top right of that component, there's a plus icon. Click that. You can, and a lot of people don't know this, you can check or uncheck to see or hide, show or hide, and you can drag them in order to reorder how you see that data. Every seller is different. So what I do, because I have the same problem, there's only a few things that I really care about. So anything I don't care about, I remove it. I hide it because I can always check it back on, right? And then I reorder based on how my brain works. So instead of resizing the columns, what I would actually recommend you do is personalize that, customize it so that you don't have to scroll. Because ideally, if scrolling is the real problem, let's avoid the scroll, right? Let's get down to the foundation of the issue. So we did that to avoid the right scrolling problem because there's a lot of data, right? It makes sense. We don't want to hide anything or remove anything. We're actually trying to add more data to that. But by allowing you to dictate in what order you see things, it removes the need to right scroll pretty much always. Like I've got mine set up to where I actually can't right scroll. It takes up the whole screen and there's nothing to the right that I'm not seeing, which is like perfect for me. So that's a good recommendation there.
Yeah, I would do the same. Yeah, if you drag any categories up towards the top of that section, that's going to be furthest to the left. So you can kind of reconfigure it that way.
Yep. So we got about 10 minutes here left. Any other questions we could dive deep into and help out with? Great questions so far, by the way. I appreciate everybody making the time.
Yeah, definitely.
I know it's holiday season. Everybody's starting to relax. It's getting cold. Everybody's making campfires and s'mores.
Yep.
Got to be out here hustling. No, I'm just kidding. Take time, enjoy, see your family, take some time off. That's the whole point of building a business and having the ability to do that. Mm-hmm. I am curious, let us know in the comments, are you taking the rest of the year off? This is something that a lot of sellers do. And I'm curious kind of like what's the trend right now? Or are you kind of like, hey, I'm letting things sell, but I'm not sourcing. I'm letting it ride and I'm enjoying my life until January 1st. Let us know in the comments. I'm very curious. I know a lot of sellers do that. So I don't think I did, but great question here. What does the position column mean? Okay, so for every listing, you have a list of positions where position 1 is essentially the lowest price. So think of positioning, like being position 1 is not necessarily better than position 4. It's solely ranking all the offers on a listing based on lowest to highest in price. So your position is basically, if you're in position 4, you are the 4th lowest price. It's good to know kind of where you're at, but I personally don't use it in that way. Like just because 1 is not necessarily better than 4, 4 is not better than 10, so on and so forth. But it is good to see at a glance, like, oh, I'm in position 25. That might be bad. Like maybe I'm way too far out of line. That could be a nice indicator of like the price is really driving down, things of that nature.
Yeah, it's a good pulse check. Like, as we know, Amazon factors in price, shipping times, and your seller rating to determine the buy box winner. So you don't even have to be position 1 to be the buy box winner. Sometimes it is the case. I've seen people be position 5 or 6 and be the buy box winner depending on their competition. So it doesn't necessarily, I wouldn't use it to inform any major decisions. But like Dylan said, if you're looking at maybe, I'm position 15 to 20, might want to adjust because that's probably not a super competitive price. But just a quick way to kind of check where you sit amongst those other competitors on that specific list.
Yeah, it might just be a little signal like, maybe I'll take a deeper look at this particular listing, but only if that number is super high. Yeah, great question though. All right, give it a few more minutes here and then we'll wrap up. Let everybody get back to their campfires and s'mores. I think I just really want s'mores. I think that's all I really want.
I was going to say, it sounds like marshmallows are really right now.
Yeah, it might be. Need to watch, what's that movie? Squints and all them baseball movie. I'm blanking on everything today. Sandlot. Thank you. Yeah. I keep wanting to call it Little Rascals. I'm like, Dylan, it's not Little Rascals.
Same era.
Goodness.
Different movie.
Yeah. Similar vibes, All right, so I've chatted in about this, but can't seem to wrap my head around it. For the maintenance portion of the strategy where it says how to price once you've acquired the buy box, if I choose raise price within 2 cents, will it automatically raise me to 2 cents to the next person in hopes I stay in the buy box? It does make sense, and yes. So basically the way it's going to work, when you say raise, where basically the maintenance section is looking at when are you in the buy box, and then it's going to take over. And then if you say raise, it's basically going to say, okay, if I am in the buy box at $20, or let's say I'm in the buy box at $10. If I say a raise by 2 pennies, it's going to look for the next lowest offer. And let's say the next lowest offer is at $20. In that case, Aura is going to take me directly to 1998, right? So that 98 to 20, that's your 2 pennies. So you're basically going to be 2 pennies below the next lowest offer in hopes, yes, that you stay in the buy box, but you recovered some profit margin. You can do lower, in which case it would do the inverse of that. I tend to recommend mainly a raise. If you're trying to be super aggressive, you could definitely do lower and raise. It gets a little complicated. But the general recommendation is for the maintenance section, you want to raise 2 pennies. That's a good thing to it's like a safety net. It just makes sure that just because you're in the buy box and getting sales doesn't necessarily mean that that's a great outcome. Because if you could be $5 higher, then why wouldn't you? And so that just ensures that you're not getting stuck at a lower price. And by the way, like Aura will actually weaponize that against other repricing tools because not all of them have that kind of functionality. And so I can actually push you down, raise up, force you to sell out at a super low price. You think it tanks so you don't restock and it pops back up to me a day later. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. So it's a good thing to use and have in your strategies.
Yep. Yeah, that maintenance section is essentially designed to maximize your profit while being the buy box winner. If that maintenance function takes you out of the buy box or is just going to default back to your regular strategy settings. But yeah, definitely recommend raised within 2 cents just to be 2 cents below that next highest offer.
Yeah. And so, yeah, exactly. So it's going to go directly there. So it's not going to do 2 cents at a time. It's going to be one price update, massive win, wherever it needs to go, and you're good. And yes, s'mores time. I don't have anything here. We don't have any of the ingredients in my home. We're trying to be good. Except for when I sneak out on lunch and get Wendy's.
I've been on a big root beer float kick recently.
Ooh, see, I don't like root beer. I'm not a root beer guy.
Wow,
dude. My wife and stepson love root beer. I despise it. Can't stand the taste.
I just don't drink soda anymore, and root beer is like my preferred soda. So when I get that and then that little bit of vanilla ice cream on top, yeah, it's perfect.
It's like when you don't have soda for a while and you drink a Dr. Pepper, you're just like, oh,
it's crazy.
All right, that hits. Awesome. Well, listen, we're wrapping up here on time. Appreciate everybody making the time to come hang out with us, ask some great questions. Thank you guys. Got some updates coming for you. We'll notify you via email of those changes, some nice little feature updates for you coming out this week and next. But with that, enjoy the rest of your week.
Yeah, have a good week, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.